Hi, my name is Taylor Fagala, and today I will be presenting my essay about Michelangelo and Rembrandt and how they impacted the sculptures around the world today, and Rembrandt's self-portraits, and why I think he created them, and how they might help people today, and why kids even do them in school today. Because I think he impacted a lot of the modern world and how we look at self portraits now, because he created a lot of them. So, Michelangelo and Rembrandt are both prime examples of spreading their work into the world and impacting people for centuries. Michelangelo and Rembrandt brought self portraits, statues, and meaning in their work to the modern world. Michelangelo is famous for two art forms, painting and sculpting. Sculpting is what brought Michelangelo to fame, starting with Pieta. Pieta is a unique art piece of Mary holding her dead son, Jesus. And there's a picture of that in chapter 13, section of Michelangelo Buonarroti. There are a few connections that we can make to the modern world that have been borrowed from Michelangelo. Mount Rushmore is a mountain with four especially important presidents carved into it. Pieta is known for the emotion and body proportions of Mary. Mount Rushmore is a memorial honoring the great presidents of the past. Pieta is honoring the motherly love that Mary had for Jesus and the power that God put behind her to have Jesus as a child. Mary didn't only bear God a child, but she also watched her child die. Mary was a brave woman, and that is shown through her outswung arm and open hand, and her final acceptance of God's will in the sacrifice of her son. And that was written by Eric Gibson in Michelangelo's Thinking Hand on page 50. On page 16, sorry. Seeing that Michelangelo honored people through his sculptures in modern day, honor also came through them. Not only did Pieta influence modern day statues, such as the Statue of Liberty, but you could also see Michelangelo's influence can be seen in such early sculptures as the Matrodome and David. And that was also written by Eric Gibson in Michelangelo's Buonarroti and Bernini on page 50. The Statue of Liberty is, like I said, another big example of honoring something through a sculpture. Michelangelo was incredibly good at expressing emotion in his sculpture and making fabric look real. And the Statue of Liberty wears a big robe, and her expression is kind of hopeful. Both of these sculptures show us that Michelangelo could have had an impact, or could have, on the Western culture. Now, Rembrandt had a traumatic life growing up, and he showed his pain and his hurt through his paintings. At one point, his life was so bad that he virtually gave up oil paintings for several years. And that was written by Michael Prodger, and that's us in the picture on page 88. When he came back to his paintings, when Rembrandt came back to his painting, his tone changed, and the most well-known paintings from Rembrandt are his self-portraits, in particular, of which he made 45, which is more than any pre-20th century artist, which is also by Michael Prodger on page 88. The fact that Rembrandt made so many paintings of himself surprised many people. They usually tried to interpret the meaning behind them and even tried to guess his personality from the paintings. Why would Rembrandt be so focused on himself? Why was he so self-centered? What significance do these paintings have? And people wondered why. But usually, if people can usually answer these questions by looking at the classrooms of young children today. Shaping the minds of young children of the modern world can be hard. Ensuring that children are educated and well rounded takes a special type of person and the right teaching. It is common in art class for children to make self portraits. And they usually hang them up for others to see. This gives children the perspective of looking at themselves and noticing what features they have. What is a nose? What is an eye? Where are their eyebrows? Where's their mouth? It is important for children to be able to know who they are and what they look like and to learn self love. When children observe themselves, it allows them to learn to love themselves. Learning to love themselves allows kids to have self respect and good self esteem. And it might seem that Rembrandt was self centered because of how many self portraits he made, but maybe he was trying to learn more about himself by expressing his emotions on paper. His paintings could have been a healing process for him. He could have been trying to show the world how he felt and maybe even who he was. Rembrandt could have been showing the world that there can be something meaningful behind a self portrait. Maybe he wanted people to see that self portraits can help people see themselves in a good light. Painting a self portrait could be a healing process for someone with trauma or damage, and that could have been one of the reasons why Rembrandt made so many, so that he could heal from his trauma and grow from it. And I think that's what made him so great. The fact that through pitiless self examination, he became one of the greatest portrayers of raw, universal, psychological self portraits. And that was written by Sue Prideaux in Educating Rembrandt on page 89. In conclusion, Michelangelo and Rembrandt both impacted the modern world in two different but significant ways. What is even more impressive is that it did not take long for each artist to impact someone in the next century. Michelangelo influenced Bernini, who was famous 200 years after Michelangelo was born, taking inspiration from the first David. Rembrandt influenced painters like Vincent van Gogh, who was also born 200 years after Rembrandt became famous. This shows that both of their methods were moving and memorable. Now, when looking at famous monuments or even school hallways, people will know that these amazing artists have impacted the modern era and will continue to do so for many more years.